Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Ayin Amud Aleph, starting with the new Mishnah on Daf Samechtes Amud Beis. The Mishnah now turns its focus from a Korban Pesach to the Korban Chagiga. The Korban Chagiga is referring to the Korban Chagiga of Arba Asar, which is brought on the 14th of Nisan before the Korban Pesach. And the purpose of bringing the Korban Chagiga, because it's not a Choiv, rather it's a Reshus, but in order to then give the Bailim, those who are going to then partake in the Korban Pesach, Seviyah, so that when they eat the Korban Pesach, they'll be eating it ala Soiva. This is come in contrast to the Chagiga, which is brought on the 15th. That is the Korban Chagiga for a Chag, whether it's Sukkis or Pesach or Shavuos, that's brought on the first day, Lechatchila of the Chag. That's a different Korban Chagiga, which is also Korban Shlomim. Says the Mishnah, Eimosai Mevi Chagiga Imoy. When is the Korban Chagiga brought together with the Korban Pesach? Says the Mishnah, Bizman Shehu Ba Bechol, when it is during the weekday. B'Tahara, when the Bailim is in a state of Tahara. Uvemuat, minan the Bailim, meaning even the Tzibur, which can bring a Korban Pesach when the Rov Tzibur, we said, is instead of Tumah, but they cannot bring the Korban Chagiga. Uvemuat, and when the Chabura is going to be Memuat, that means to say that there's only going to be a little bit of meat, of Basar from the Korban Pesach, whereby they won't be satiated. So in order to satiate themselves, again, to eat the Korban Pesach ala Soiva, only then they will bring the Korban Chagiga. So if any of these elements are missing, then they will not bring a Korban Chagiga. Uvizman shehu b'mishabis, when they do bring it, the Korban Pesach on Shabbos, because Yudali comes out to be on Shabbos, or b'meruba, or there is a lot of people, meaning to say that there's going to be a lot of meat, not people, but a lot of meat that's going to be provided from the Korban Pesach, because there's few participants in the Chabura. Uvetuma, or the Tzibur is in a state of Tuma, then Ein Mevin Imoy Chagiga, then there will not be a Korban Chagiga be brought together with the Korban Pesach. The Mishnah goes on to say, Chagiga haisa ba minat tzoyin or minat bakar. It can be brought either from tzon or bakar, minat kvosim, minat izim, from either lamb or goat, minat zcharim, minat kevas, male or female, v'ne'echolas l'shnei yomim v'layla echad, and is eaten 2 days and 1 night. All of this comes in contrast to the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach has to be dafka from the tzoin, either keves or eiz, which is 1 year old. And here we're saying that the Korban Chagiga can be brought even from Bokar, and it can be brought even from a Nekeva. The Korban Pesach has to be with a Zochar, a 1 year old Zochar. Also, the Korban Pesach is only eaten 1 night. You cannot eat it already the next morning. If you leave it over, it's considered to be noisar. It's an iser in the Torah to leave over the Korban Pesach meat till the next morning. Whereas over here, the Korban Chagiga is not only the day that it's brought, but 1 night and the next day as well. Ask the Gemara, my Tana diktani Chagiga. What is the Tana now all of a sudden teaching about Korban Chagiga? Until now we've been talking about Korban Pesach. So what is the logical connection between the previous Mishnayos and now our Mishnah? Says the Gemara, Tana herkavtoi vehavosoi deloi dochi Shabbos. The previous Mishnah had taught that when one brings an animal from either outside the Tchum, or he carries it even within the Tchum, but he carries it from the Rishus HaRabim to the Rishus HaYachid, then the Mishnah says over there that it's posul, or it's a machlokes rather. It's a machlokes whether you can go ahead and it's doiches Shabbos or not. It's a machlokes. Rabbi Akiva said it's not doiches Shabbos. Rabbi Lesin says it's doiches Shabbos. Rabbi Yeshua agrees with Rabbi Akiva as well. Viktoni nami chagiga deladachya Shabbos. And the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva is not doiches Shabbos. So too, this Mishnah also follows that opinion that it's not doiches Shabbos, the Korban Chagiga, as well, when it comes out to be on Shabbos. V'hochi ka'amar, and this is what it's saying. When do we bring the Korban Chagiga together with the Korban Pesach? That's when the Korban Pesach is brought during the week. It's brought b'tahara and also b'muat. That means to say there's only a little meat to go around for the Korban Pesach. Therefore, we'd have to bring a Korban Chagiga. Rav Ashi says, Shema Mino Chagigos Arbosar Lav Choyvahi. We can derive from here that the Korban Chagiga is not a choiva, because if it was a choiva, then we would be able to bring it in these situations, in these circumstances. Top of Ayin Amud Aleph. If it would be indeed a choiva, tasty b'Shabbos, you'd then be able to bring the Korban Chagiga even when Yudah comes out to be on Shabbos. V'tasty b'Meruba, you'd be able to bring the Korban Chagiga even when there are a lot of meat. And also v'tasty b'Tuma, and even when the Korban Pesach is brought in a state of Tuma, Elamai, it must be that it's not a choiva. Uvemuat miu my taima asya, when it's only a little bit. What is the reason, Taka, why it's brought? If there's only a little bit of meat of the Korban Pesach, the Gemara spells it out. Kidetani, like it states in the Brisa, Chagigo haba ima Pesach nechal as tchila kedesh ye Pesach noichal ala nechal ala soiva. The reason why the Korban Chagiga is brought to provide meat, so that people will then partake in the Korban Chagiga. They'll become initially satiated, whereby then when they eat the Korban Pesach, it's ala soiva. So that's why it's required in a situation when there's not enough meat to go around for the Korban Pesach. The Gemara quotes our Mishnah v'ne'echales l'shnei yomim. It states in the end of the Mishnah, unlike the Korban Pesach, which can only be eaten up that night, the Korban Chagiga can be eaten that day, the night, and that subsequent day as well. The Gemara points out that our Mishnah must not follow the opinion of Ben Tema. Why? The Tanya, because it states in the following Brisa, Ben Tema oimer Chagigo habo ima Pesach. The Korban Chagiga is brought together with the Pesach, harehi ke Pesach. And it's only eaten Yom V'Layla. Yom V'Layla is lav dafka, because the Korban Pesach is only eaten at night. It's not being eaten during the day. It's nishchat on Yudale during the day, but it's eaten on the night of Tezvav. So he's saying that Chagiga is the same way. That's also only eaten that night. And the Chagiga of Chamisha Sar. Before we're talking about the Chagiga of Arba Sar, but the Chagiga of Chamisha Sar, which is brought during the Chag itself, the first day of the Yom Tif, that is indeed eaten 2 days and a night. The Chagiga Arba Sar Yoitze b'mishum Simcha, then Yoitze b'mishum Chagiga. If the Korban Chagiga of Arba Sar, which is normally eaten on Arba Sar, is normally eaten together with the Korban Pesach. If it was not eaten with the Korban Pesach, then you can be Yoitze the Shalmei Simcha. Shalmei Simcha is the Korban Shlomim that's brought during Yontif, so that one can then partake in Basar during the rest of Yontif. So he's able to then Mekayim that Chiyuv or of Korban Shlomim of Shalmei Simcha. However, it does not go towards the Shalmei Chagiga of Chamesh Asar. Since Chamesh Asar is a choiva, it cannot be used for that choiva, and therefore it will only be used for the Shalmei Simcha. Those are the words of Ben Tema. So the Gemara points out that our Mishnah cannot be according to Ben Tema, because our Mishnah states that the Korban Chagiga is 2 nights and a day. And Ben Tema says the Korban Chagiga of Arba Asar is only the same as Korban Pesach, which is only that night. Ask the Gemara, my Taima de Ben Tema. What is the reasoning behind Ben Tema? Gemara explains, Kedemasni Rav Chia Berei. Like Rav explained to his son Chia. V'lo yolin laboiker zevach Chag Pesach. This pasuk states, regards to the Korban Pesach, that says, Lo yolin La Boiker, you should not leave the Korban Pesach overnight until the morning. and it used the word Zevach Chag HaPesach. Could you just said HaPesach? Why does it add the word Zevach Chag HaPesach? Explains Rav to his son, Zevach Chag Ze Chagiga. That's a reference to the Korban Chagiga. HaPesach Kimashmo. And therefore, V'omer Rachmana Lo Yolin. So it says not to leave over not only the Korban Pesach, but even the Korban Chagiga of Arba Asar cannot be levered the next morning, which we see therefore, says Ventema, that you can only then eat the Korban Chagiga of Arba Asar one night, just like the Korban Pesach. The Gemara asks, Iboy Lahu Leben Tema, according to this opinion of Ben Tema, Nechelet Sli or Ein Nechelet Sli? Can the Chagiga be eaten only if it is roasted, like the Korban Pesach? So it's exactly similar to the Korban Pesach? Or do we say it's different than the Korban Pesach in the sense that it does not have to be eaten roasted? Gemara asks this question. Ki akshe rachmona lepesach lelina aval letzli loy. When the Gemara pointed out that there's a comparison to the Korban Pesach with the Chagiga, in that it's compared in regards to leaving it overnight. It's saying that it can only be eaten one night, just like the Korban Pesach. Is that going to be so only in regards to Lina? But when it comes to the Tzli, it does not have to be eaten Tzli like Korban Pesach? Or Dilma Loishna? Or perhaps there's no distinction between the two. The same way that you cannot eat the Korban Pesach more than one night, we learn that out to the Korban Shlom as well, the Korban Chagiga as well. Similarly, just like the Korban Pesach can only even be Tzli when it is roasted, so too the Korban Chagiga of Arba Asar can also only even be roasted. That's the question. Toshma, the Gemara brings a proof. Halayla hazeh kulo tzli. Like we say on Nil HaSeder at the Haggadah, the Mishnah says that this night of the 15th of Leil HaSeder, all of the meat is tzli. Mashim, not only the Korban Pesach, but even the Korban Chagiga of Arba Asar. V'om Rav Chizda zu divrei Rabbi Ben Tema. Shmamina, indeed we can derive that Ben Tema holds that the Chagiga has to be in also tzli. The Gemara further asks on the comparison of the Chagiga of Arba Asar to the Korban Pesach. Leben Tema, iboyla leben Tema, ba ben habokar or eno ba min habokar. Can it be brought the Chagiga from Bakar or not? It can only be brought from Tzon, just like the Korban Pesach. Ba min ha-nekevos or eno ba min ha-nekevos. Can it be brought with animals that are nekevos or only with zechorim like the Korban Pesach? Ba bashtei shanim or eno ba bashtei shanim. Can it be brought with an animal that is 2 years old or only an animal that's brought 1 year old like the Korban Pesach? Ki akshe rachmanana lepesach lemide da'achila. When we made the hekesh, the comparison to Korban Pesach, that's only regards to the eating. For example, eating one night and letting it stay over until the next morning. Or in regards to then eating it tzli. That's the comparison. Aval lekol mili loy. But for everything else, it's not compared exactly to the Korban Pesach. Or dilma loishna. Perhaps there's no difference. And indeed, we compare everything to the Korban Pesach. Toshma, let's bring a proof. Chagiga. The Brisa says, Chagiga habo ima Pesach harehu kepesach. The Korban Chagiga that's brought together with the Korban Pesach, behold, it's like a Pesach. In what way? Bo minat soin veina bo minat bokar. It can only be brought with soin. That means with an A's or with a keves, just like Korban Pesach. Bo minat zechoin veina bo minat keves. It has to be brought with dafka males, as the Korban Pesach is. Bo minat bashnosa veina bo bat shtei shonim. Just like Korban Pesach is only 1 year old, so too the Chagiga of Arba Asar can only be with an animal 1 year old. And it can, just like the Korban Pesach can only be that night, so too the Korban Chagiga can only be brought and eaten that first night. Similarly, can only even roasted as the Korban Pesach. It can only be eaten together with those that were encountered, included in the Chabura, as the Korban Pesach. And therefore we see that the comparison to the Korban Pesach is 100%, not limited just to the things that are eaten. Man shamis lay the islay haisvara. And who indeed is the shita that says that is compared to the Korban Pesach in its totality? Ben Tema. it's ben tema. Shma mina kulu milsa ba'inon shma imina. Indeed, that all of these things are required to be the same as Korban Pesach, and this is the shita of ben tema. Now ask the Gemara, Iboi lahu, the following question: Leben tema yesh ba mishum shviras etzem, oy eina ba mishum shviras etzem. That which we say there's an isser of breaking the bone on the Korban Pesach, does that also carry over to the Korban Chagiga of Arbasa according to Ben Tema? So what's the question? Even though there's a comparison from the Korban Chagiga to the Korban Pesach, and we just mentioned a list of things that the same way the Korban Pesach is required, so too the Korban Chagiga of Arbasa also is required. Or Markro, maybe over here it's different. Gabe, the Isser of breaking the bone. The Pasuk states in regards to the Korban Pesach, Ve'etzem lo tishbaru boy. It says in the Pasuk. From that, maybe it says boy, the etzem you cannot break in the Korban Pesach, boy in it. Boy v'loy bechagiga, to exclude the Korban Chagiga. And therefore, that would be different. There would not be an Isser to break the bone of the Chagiga. Or Dilma, perhaps, hi boy, bekosher v'lo beposel hu de'asa. Or perhaps that which it's saying boy is coming to exclude if a Korban Pesach was ultimately brought and it was a psul, then he's not going to be over the Isur deraisa of breaking the bone. So that's the question. What is the comparison? Is it completely including the breaking of the bone to the Korban Chagiga or not? Toshma, the Gemara brings the following. It says in the Mishnah in Shkolim, Sakin shenimtzeis ba'ar bosar shoichei ba miyad. A person in Yerushalayim finds on the Yud Dalid, on the 14th of Nisan, a knife, and he's not sure, it's not clear, was that knife already made to be tahor by immersing it in a mikvah or not. So he can assume that indeed it was already immersed prior, because in anticipation for the 14th being for the shechting of the Korban Pesach, whoever owned that knife, he already was toivil it already on Yud Gimel, because you require not only the Tevila but also the Herav Shemesh, that'd be nightfall. So he already was toivil it the day before on Yud Gimel, with anticipation to be able to be used the next day on Yud Daled. So a person who finds such a knife can shech the Korban Pesach with that knife. Bishloisha Osar. Here we're assuming that this knife doesn't have any simonim, and therefore you don't have to return it to the bailim. Whoever finds it is able to keep it. And we know that a non-kohen can then shecht, do the shechita on a korban. So therefore he can use this knife to shech the korban on Yud Daled. Bishloisha Osar shoyna umatbil. The Mishnah goes on to say, if he finds the knife on the 13th, then he's to then go ahead and toivel matbil the knife again. Meaning, misafek, that maybe the bailim did not toivel, not build the knife, whereby since maybe he did not immerse the knife, therefore he has to do it again. Because over here we're talking about he found it on the 13th, and presumably the owner of the knife would wait till close to Ben Hashmoshois to then build the knife, and therefore have it ready for the next day on the 14th, whereby if somebody found it in the middle of the day on the Yud Gimel, he has to be in safek whether it was already a knife that was immersed. So therefore he has to be shoino matbil. The Mishnah goes on to say that's in regards to a regular knife, the knife that he uses to shech the korban. However, a koifetz, this is a bigger knife that is used to cut the meat and to break the bones of the animal. Bein bezeh shoina umatbil. The Mishnah says whether it's the 13th or the 14th that he found this koifetz, he must go ahead out of safek and matbil the koifetz, whether it's the 13th or the 14th. Mani, so the presumption is that the reason why you can't go ahead and rely on this koifetz as being already immersed on the 14th is because perhaps we're saying over here that this koifetz, this is going to then be used for breaking a bone. And since breaking a bone cannot be done not in the Korban Pesach, and we're assuming now that also for the Korban Chagiga, therefore it was not by its owner immersed. Mani asked the Gemara, who's the author of such a Mishnah? Ilemo Rabbanon. If you're going to say it's the Rabbanon, who again, they have no problem breaking the bone of the Korban Chagiga. They don't make the comparison from the Korban Pesach to the Korban Chagiga. Maishna Sakin, the Matbil, the Chazi LePesach, Kovitz Nami Ho Chazi LeChagiga. Just as the Sakin itself is something that's roy, is fitting to be used to shech the Korban Pesach, so too the Koifetz would be used and fitting to be used for the Chagiga, to break the bones. So therefore it can't be the Rabbanan. Ella must be Ella Lav the Ben Teimahi. This Mishnah must be Ben Teima, whereby we can bring a proof that he is Chaysha, he holds that the Chagiga also cannot break the bone. V'shmamina yesh ba mishum shviras ha'etzem. So that's the proof we want to bring that to our question, whether he compares the Korban Chagiga to the Korban Pesach in this regard too, as regards to the breaking of the bone. The Gemara says, "Lo, you have no proof because lo oilam rabbanon." You can say that this Mishnah Chagiga in Shkolim is indeed authored by the Rabbanon. If that's so, why then do you have to be matbil the koifetz on Yud Dalid? What's the chashash? Says the Gemara, Kagon Sheba b'Shabbos. We're talking about where Yud Dalid comes out to be on Shabbos, where you bring the Korban Pesach on Shabbos, you don't bring a Korban Chagiga. So therefore, since you don't bring a Korban Chagiga, he wasn't toivel, and therefore misafik, you have to be toivel the koifetz. Ask the Gemara, Tani Seifa, but the rest, the latter part of this Mishnah of Shkolim goes on to say, Chal arba sar liyos b'Shabbos shoichet ba miyad. If Yudalid comes out to be on Shabbos, then you can take the koifetz and you can use the koifetz miyad. Meaning to say, the assumption is over here that since it's Yudalid, that he went ahead and he was toivil, he was matbil the koifetz on Erev Shabbos, because he wants to use it for the 15th, the Chagiga of the 15th, and you can't be matbil a kli, a knife, or anything else for that matter, on Shabbos. So he did so on the previous day, on Yud Gimel. So therefore, if he found a knife, a koifetz on Yud Dalid, that comes out to be on Shabbos, he can use it. Uvechamisha asar shoichet b'miyad. Also, if he finds it on Chamisha asar, he can also then shoichet, he can also use it immediately for the 15th, for the Korban Chagiga of the 15th. Nimtzeis koifetz kshur l'sakin. The Mishnah goes on to say, if he finds a koifetz that is bound together with a knife, then harehu kisakin, then it has the same din as the sakin. Just as the sakin on the 14th during the week, we can assume that it was already by the bailim immersed in the mikvah. So to the koifetz, because if it's together with the knife, he must have then also immersed the koifetz with the knife at the same time, and therefore that's also going to be the assumption here as well. So the point is that we see from this Mishnah that the Mishnah in the Seif is talking about a situation where it comes out to be Yud Daled on Shabbos. It says the Gemara, Michlal de Reish la b'Shabbos. Therefore, it must be that the Reish is not talking about where Yud Daled comes out to be on Shabbos. The Elo, says the Gemara, Sheba b'Meruba. So Gemara says no. You can explain the Reish to be that you have no proof because the Reish is talking about where it came b'Meruba. There's a lot over here. Since there's a lot of meat in the Korban Pesach, there's no need to then make a Korban Chagiga. And that's why there's no need to have then the koifetz. And that's the distinction that the Mishnah makes in the Reisha, where if you found the koifetz on Yud Gimel, you have to be shoyno mat, but you can't assume that it's something that was already immersed. Ask the Gemara, but mino yodei. From where do they know that indeed, when it's already on the 13th, that there's going to be meruba? And how do you know how many people are going to be included in this Korban Pesach? That you would know that you would not need to bring a Korban Chagiga. People are constantly being included and being excluded from the Chabura prior to the Shechita. And since the Shechita is only on Yud Daled, Yud Gimel, you would never know how many participants are in this Korban Pesach. So therefore, how would you know? Therefore, the Gemara says, "Ve'ela sheba betuma." You're right. Rather, we're talking about a case in the Reisha where it's a state of tuma. That means that Klal Yisrael, Rov of the Tzibor, is in a state of tuma. They're bringing the Korban Pesach in a state of tumah, which is mutter, and therefore, although it's mutter to bring Korban Pesach, it's also to bring a Korban Chagiga. And that's why they don't, when you find the koifetz on Yud Gimel, you assume that it wasn't immersed. And that's why this distinction between the koifetz and the shechita knife. Ask the Gemara, but soif mina yadei, how do they know that the tzibur is going to become tamei when it comes to Yud Daled? Here it's only Yud Gimel. Says the Gemara, the mis nasi. The Gemara says the way they know that the tzibur is going to be tamei on Yud Daled is because the nasi passed away. When the nasi passes away, everybody is participating in the burial of the nasi, whereby the tzibur, rov of the tzibur at least, becomes in a state of tumah. So they can bring the Korban Pesach in a state of tumah, but they cannot bring the Korban Chagiga in a state of tumah. Whereby, that's why the koifetz was not necessarily immersed. Whereby, we cannot have a proof that that Ben Tema holds that the Korban Chagiga also has an iser of breaking the bone. The Gemara asks, that which you just said, that the Nasi died, the Meis Nasi Emas, when exactly did the Nasi die? If you're going to say he died on the 13th itself, then Sakin Lamali the Matbele. Why would he have to be Matbil the Sakin? We said that when the Sibor is in a state of Tumah, they can bring the Korban Pesach in their state of Tumah. And therefore, you don't have to be Matbil the Kli either. The Ella, the Mis, Ba'ar. Rather, we must say that the Nasi passed away on the 14th of Nisan. If that's the case, ask the Gemara, then Maishno Sakin, the Matbil, or Maishno Koifetz, velo Matbil. What would be the distinction between being Matbil a Sakin and not being Matbil the Koifetz? After all, if indeed the Nasi died on the 14th, the same way that they anticipated, so therefore that they would be toivel the sakin, so then they would also have to be toivel the koifetz, because they'll need the koifetz anyways for the chagiga of the 15th. Says the Gemara, lo tzricha. The Gemara says the nasi goises b'shloshasar. The nasi was on his verge of death on the 13th. So therefore, sakin the chad sveike matpilo. Koifetz the trei sveike lo matpilo. The sakin, which is only is a situation where maybe we're not sure whether the nasi will die or not. On the side that he does not die, they were matbil the sakin because there's one suffix. But in regards to the koifetz, here there's two sfeikis. There's a suffix aleph, the same suffix whether the nasi will die or not, and a second suffix, because maybe they're asking, maybe there won't be a need to bring the Korban Chagiga altogether because of the suffix that maybe indeed they're going to be in a state of Tumah. So therefore, because there's two Sfeikis, then the assumption that he was not matbil the Kli, the Bailim assumed that since there's two Sfeikis, he doesn't need to then matbil the Kli. And that's the distinction in the Mishnah, whereby if a person then finds a Kli, he doesn't know whether the person who owned the Kli was matbil it or not. So therefore, when he finds it on the 13th, he has to then matbil the Kli once again, whereby we're left with a question. We don't know yet definitively, does Ben Tema hold that a Korban Chagig is completely compared to the Korban Pesach, in that, just like the Korban Pesach, it's also to break the bone of the Korban Pesach, so too, it would be also to break the bone of the Korban Chagiga. That's a question that still is left unanswered.